verify
Hello.
people now.
My name is Kevin Chang, and I'm a volunteer with the Happy Fest committee. I'll be one of the moderators for this panel. If you have any questions for our guests, please comment in the YouTube comments section, and we will answer them live. Any questions we don't get to will be
Is there
forwarded
Wi-Fi?
to filmmakers. I'd like to start off by giving a warm welcome to the director of Love Boat Taiwan, Valerie.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Hello. So I think one of the strengths of the documentary is that you manage to get so many perspectives from so many people. In this documentary, how do you manage to get in contact and find so many alumni of this program to interview for this piece?
You know, it was all word of mouth, really, a lot of it. And because a lot of the people who went on the trip, right, in the 80s and 90s, it was all before social media. So there are some Facebook pages out there, but a lot of it was just connecting with one person who had like a big email list. Pierre Wu is actually one of the main people that people asked me to contact. He's in the movie. He's the guy who's walking around. He's from Ohio, right? And so he had this huge email list because he used to be the person who would set up alumni parties and ski trips in the 90s. And so he had this giant email list. And so he kind of contacted me with people. And just it just went from person to person like that. Yeah.
Did you find that a lot of people wanted to talk about their experiences?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were interested in talking about it, maybe not on camera, but they definitely wanted to talk to me about it just because it was such a fun period for a lot of people's lives. So at one point, I believe I did like an online survey where people could type in, answers and so forth. And then I picked people out from that who had interesting stories too. But it took a while. I mean, we started doing research, I want to say 2014-ish. And then we didn't start shooting till like late 2015, early 2016. So, yeah.
So as a alumni of a different program in Taiwan, Taiwan Tech Trek, I noticed there's some AID kids in the program. I feel a little miffed that we didn't get put in there. Do you have any thoughts on, the Taiwan Tech Trek and other sort of similar programs to Love Boat, like AID?
What I heard was that, and I don't know if this is true or not, the reason why they started AID and Taiwan Tech Trek is because Love Boat had become so huge and kind of out of control that they were trying to break it down into more manageable programs, and also that were more focused, right? It wasn't just about like this kind of vague idea that you would come over and learn about your culture. So like AID was all about coming over and teaching English to kids in rural parts of Taiwan, right? And Taiwan Tech Trek is all about interning at tech companies. So I think there's another one too where you supposedly only learn Mandarin, so it's not really the same as Love Boat. So Love Boat itself doesn't really exist in the same way that it did back in its heyday. It's splintered off into the smaller things, and then there's also sort of the really little miniature version that we followed around in 2016.
Another question, filmmaking can both be used as an educational tool and a creative outlet. Both are present in this documentary. How do you think filmmaking has shaped the way that history is sort of like normally taught?
Here's filmmaking in general. Nowadays people really get most of their information from media, right? Either like social media or movies or television or whatever. So I think it's really important to know how to communicate with like media tools like that. So filmmaking is just one aspect of that. I mean, back in the day, more people would do things like they would read newspapers or whatever, and now that's not really something that occurs as much. So for Asian Americans, it's really important, I think, for them to be able to make movies to express themselves in like this medium in cinema.
So, Corin, you of course attended Love Boat.
Yes, I did.
What made you sort of find your way back into thinking, wow, I should make a documentary about this program,
Yeah. So, I mean, I started to want to make this movie way back in the late 90s, but then I had kids. I had one kid in 2000 and one kid in 2003. So, you don't really get to make movies for a long time after you have kids, because it's like that's what you're doing is you're being a parent. So then I picked it up again, like I said, I think I started really thinking a little bit more about seriously around 2013, because I wanted to do a project in Asia. And I remembered, I said, oh yeah, I remember this film that I was thinking about doing. I wonder if I can still manage it. And of course, between, the late 90s and 2013, a lot had happened. A lot had changed with Love Boat. So it wasn't the same program that it was before. And a lot had changed in Taiwan too. So, yeah.
So you we kind of went over the history of Love Boat a little bit and kind of how Taiwan changed as we went through that, as that process happened. How do you think Love Boat has changed specifically as Taiwan changed?
Well, when I went on it back in the 80s, Taiwan was still under martial law, and the ruling party was the KMT, right? So it's definitely gone from being a country that was under martial law to a democracy, an amazing democracy, like one of the most amazing democracies in the world, I think. So that's, I think, reflected in the program itself, because it used to be really a lot about, like you saw in the movie, kind of getting the KMT's point of view across, and it was their way of using, this program to get support for their perspective overseas. And then once their influence started to go down in the 90s and 2000s, then it changed to be a lot more sort of about Taiwanese culture and Taiwanese history, like Taiwan specific. So, I think a lot of people probably noticed that in the earlier part of the movie, people talk about being Chinese, right? And by the end of the movie, they're talking more about being Taiwanese. So that's because the Taiwanese identity really started to become much stronger in the 90s. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to field our first question from the audience over here.
Sure.
Billy Nair asks, what was the government's response after seeing your documentary? Would they consider expanding the program again?
Well, it's kind of interesting because they really seem to like it. At a lot of the film festivals that I've shown here in the US, the TECO, the Taiwan Economic and Cultural Office, has supported the screenings. And up until the time, when COVID shut down the country, they were actually going to have a lot of other screenings that they themselves were organizing. They were trying to locate more Love Boat alumni. And because I think there's not really like any kind of organized database of all the people who went on the trip all these years and years. So I think they're thinking, hey, we spent a lot of money on these kids. We should figure out where they are and who they are and how we can maybe like get in touch with them again to see if they can help out. Yeah, with the Taiwanese cause.
Another question for audience. Heidi asks, were most attendees from areas that didn't have robust Chinese Taiwanese community?
No, I don't think so. I think a lot of people were from either California or the East Coast. So, because you had to be Chinese American, right, or Taiwanese American to go. I mean, there were definitely some people from like Pierre being from Ohio and so forth, or Florida or whatever. But just because there's a higher concentration of Chinese and Taiwanese on the coasts, that's where they came from.
Okay. Yeah. Another question kind of relates back to the first question a little bit. Do you think the KMT feels the idea of the program was a success looking back?
I don't know. I mean, that's hard to say, because I think that they probably felt it was pretty successful because that's where they supported it for so long. I mean, it was a big deal for a long time. So I'm sure that they must have really felt like it was doing something they wanted it to do. Yeah.
I feel like definitely connected a lot of kids back to their roots, as mentioned in the documentary, Rediscover.
Yeah. Yeah. Even people whose families weren't from Taiwan. Like my family actually never lived in Taiwan. So I'm not really Taiwanese. I'm like Chinese American. But since, at the time when I went, the KMT thought that all Chinese, wherever they were living, or even if they didn't live in Taiwan, were part of like the ROC, right? So a lot of people were not Taiwanese identified when I went on the trip.
Oh, I didn't know that back then.
Yeah. It's very complicated. Taiwanese history is super complicated.
It is. I knew nothing about it before I went to my program, and then.
Yeah, me neither. I think I don't even know where it was. But nowadays, I have to say that a lot of people, or in later years, like in the past 10 or 15 years, people, a lot of the people who go are really familiar with Taiwan because they have gone back to visit their families there, like every summer. For instance, like there's one girl in the film, Jamie. She's in there kind of briefly at the beginning, and her father lives in Taiwan. So even though she lives in Canada, so she would go every summer and visit. She speaks fluent Mandarin, you know, so it's really different nowadays. It's not just like all of a sudden there are these Chinese American or Asian American kids who go over there and like they've never been to Asia before, you know. So
Yeah, I remember I never been in Taiwan before I did my program, and then when I got there, I realized all the other kids were like, "Oh, I did AID. I go here like pretty often." I was like, "Man, I thought I was like pretty Asian, but like every Taiwanese."
Visit their grandparents. Yeah, it's very transnational now. I feel like, you know, when we were there in 2016, that like there were a lot of people from the US who go there for the summer, and they just kind of hang out, you know. And then part of it is because like they want their little tiny, like families take their kids there, right? Their little kids, so that the kids will have like this summer experience of going to Taiwan, and then they learn a little Mandarin. Yeah. So, but that wasn't true when I was a kid. We definitely did not go back and forth to Asia all the time.
Yeah. Eugene Lee asks, I know you touched on this a little bit, but has anyone discussed doing a Love Boat Taiwan reunion?
Well, back in the 90s, there were a lot of reunions right after the trip because Pierre would organize them. And then I think they kind of fell off. But now, like I said, the government is thinking of trying to do official reunions. So we were just going to, like I said, man, we were just going to do one. Actually, it was in February. We were going to do one. And then the COVID thing started. And it wasn't even that, you know, it hadn't spread to the US yet, but it was happening in Taiwan. And so they canceled the screening that we were going to have in February in San Francisco, even though, I mean, it was probably a smart thing to do at that time. But yeah, so hopefully they'll pick up it again when we're allowed to travel and go outside.
And then one more audience question. Mercedes Wood asks, how did you find Justin Tan?
So this is a very funny story, and it'll show you how old I am. Okay, so I had some of my students at San Francisco State, which is where I teach. I teach in Asian American Studies there. They were like, you know, doing independent study with me and doing research. And so one of them was going through, her job was to look on YouTube and try to find clips about Love Boat. And so she would just like enter it into the search bar, right? And she calls me, or she wrote me a note and she said, I just found this clip of Justin Tan on Love Boat when he was 17. And I'm like, oh, who's that? I don't know who that is. And everybody I asked is like, you know, so this Justin Tan person, do you know who it is? And they were like, yes, oh my God, he's on BuzzFeed. Yeah. So yeah, so that's how we found Justin Tan. Justin Tan is a really, really great guy, by the way. He gave us that interview. He gave us, you know, a bunch of footage. He hooked us up with other people who went on the trip. He and George went on the same year, the guy who didn't go out partying, the one who stayed in his room and played poker or card games. Yeah. So they were on the same trip. And Justin recommended that I talk to George because George had shot a lot of the video that Justin was in. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's nice to get other perspectives of people who, you know, weren't as wild.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody went out in, not everybody went out in, and went out partying. I mean, I didn't do that much, but a lot of people did. So
we have another really great audience question. Billionaire asks again, seems like making the film was a lot of fun. Were there any parts you had to cut out? And who was the most fun to interview?
You know, I have to say a lot of people were sort of shy about talking about like the romantic aspects of the trip. They were like really coy about it. So like Christina Wong, who's the person reading from her diary, right? She's kind of the only person who was really upfront about it. It's like, yeah, I met this guy, we made out, you know. It's like everybody else didn't want to talk about it on camera, and they were super shy. It was like, what is wrong with you people? I mean, this is like 20 years ago. Nobody's going to care. Yeah. Same thing with some of the footage of people in clubs. I had to ask permission for all the people who had club footage, right? Like I found it on YouTube or whatever. And one of the people wrote back, I think the footage was from like 1999, some like in the 90s. And she said, I don't think I want to put that footage in there. I don't think it's right that we should have pictures of people going to clubs in Taiwan. It's like 1999. Are your parents going to be mad at you in 2016 that you went to like some club 25 years ago? I don't think so. So it was kind of funny. I thought that was like, wow, okay.
I imagine you had like plausible deniability too, you know, at that point.
That wasn't me. Yeah. Actually, there's one shot in there where there's a girl smoking a cigarette in a club, and my editor was like, oh, please don't tell me we have to get rid of that because I love that clip where she's smoking a cigarette. And luckily we were able to use that. So, yeah.
So you had to actually track down like all those people you found in these clips. You had to like go, okay, who was that? Who was that?
You know, we tried our best. You have to do that for legal reasons, because and all the people in the photos too. So we haven't done it for everybody because it's just like a huge amount of work, but we really tried hard. So we have like a whole spreadsheet. It's like girl with cigarette, you know, girl dancing, guy on the beach, and then we have to like find them. And sometimes, like I said, okay, so that song at the very end of the movie, right, with over the credits, the Love Boat song, we still don't know who those people are. Like I've reached out to like the Facebook page that they're from their year. You know, I've asked everybody, who are these people? We need to get in touch with them. Please let us know. So if anybody knows who those people are, I think they're from 2010. Please let me know.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some Love Boat alumni watching that
yeah,
could probably help you out here.
I hope so. And also the girls, there's some girls that the part where it's playing like a G6 and she holds up the bag of cocaine, which is not really cocaine. We don't know who those people are either, because that's also from YouTube, and it was impossible to find them. So
wow.
Yeah, but we did our due diligence. We tried our best.
It sounds like painstaking work.
It's a lot of work, yeah, but it was fun.
So another question, do you have any upcoming projects or film ideas coming up? And how has your previous documentary experience and your Love Boat experience impacted your filmmaking process and the themes that you focus on?
You know, I mean, ever since the COVID thing started, I've been making face masks is what I do. So I've been sewing face masks for the anti-sewing squad. And so I'm looking around for face masks. There's none within reach of me. But here, I'll show you. Here's my sewing machine. You can see my sewing machine. Oops, wait, wrong one. Where's the sewing machine? There it is. There's my sewing machine. So anyway, yeah, so all I do, I mean, I you know, school's out now, so I make face masks. And I made a documentary. I made a little mini doc that's on YouTube, a micro doc. It's called Sewing in the Age of Coronavirus. So you can search that if you want. It's 2 minutes long. I think it's on Instagram and Twitter too, because it was designed to go on social media. Okay. And it's part of a series that the Asian American Documentary Network put together, that all are these little docs about COVID, and how people are dealing with it. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think people should definitely go check it out.
Another
question from the audience. Ron Yang asks, what do you think about the fact that there's a Love Boat narrative film in development?
Well, it's funny because the author of the book that film is based on, I think it's called Love Boat Taipei. She contacted me before the book was published, and she said, I wrote this book. It's coming out soon. We should try to do some cross-promotion. And so we've done some events together. Like we did, we've done screenings and book signings together. And it's interesting to see how that's all of a sudden become like a thing. It's like blown up into this new thing. It's like Love Boat. Wow, who knew? That would be like something that people cared about.
Yeah, I feel like, especially since I think the program doesn't exist the way it does before, I feel like a lot of people are reminiscing on it. Yeah.
Wait, Benjamin Ha. Uh-oh. Are you in the movie, Ben? I can't remember if you have any pictures in there. Maybe he gave me some money for the Indiegogo campaign. So I think you did, actually. Yeah. I'm glad a lot of people got to see it who donated too. I'm hoping that these online screenings, people can watch the movie, at least virtually. It's not quite as fun as seeing it in person, but yeah. I heard people were shouting out their Love Boat years in the comments when the movie was going.
Yeah, I definitely saw a little bit of that when I was in the live stream earlier.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine if there was live screenings of this, it would be more mini Love Boat reunions going on all around.
Yeah, it turns into little reunions all over the country. So, and then sometimes people who are like have pictures in the movie that I haven't seen since I went on the trip come up and talk to me about being in my pictures. Like, oh, hi, Jerry. I haven't seen you for a long time. So that's kind of fun. It's been fun for me too.
Benjamin added that he doesn't have any pics in it, but about Love Boat. he wouldn't have met his wife.
Oh, yay. Another success story.
I was like, the name is the.
Yeah, the government was really sneaky, right? They made this program that was all about supposedly learning about your culture, but it was really about going out and partying. But then it was really all about learning about Taiwan and like figuring out how to get support for Taiwan from all these American kids. So it was very clever. It was a really, really smart program. And then of course the parents wanted the kids to go because they all wanted like Asian grandchildren, right? And then the kids would go because it was just a big party and it was super cheap. So
Of course. So we're going to bring on Angela. She is with the Happy Fest committee as well.
Hi again. Hi, Valerie. Thanks. I just have one last question, and it was beautiful to hear your story being told on the documentary as well, on top of everyone else who got representation. And speaking of representation, 2020 is a very special year because of the census and also registering to vote for this year's election. I'm wondering if you get some thoughts about how you think the 2020 census is going to be impactful and why we should fill it out.
Oh, it's totally important because I believe that like the census is how the government decides like what kind of funding different programs get based on your census tract, right? Mm-hmm. And there's also like a Taiwanese tie-in. So last census in 2010, there was a write-in thing where people would write in Taiwanese American because that's not like an option. And so I think they got like 150,000 people to write in Taiwanese American, which is more than they've ever had, right? Because they just all lump everybody together in like Chinese American or Asian American. So I think that there's a campaign to do that again, is to write in Taiwanese American if you're Taiwanese American.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, more visibility.
Yes. And so we don't have to click like the other and then we'll have an actual category in there.
Yeah, maybe we'll get
awesome.
Maybe the Taiwanese will get an actual category someday.
Okay, well, I think that's it for us because we have to end at 9:30. Okay. So thank you again for everyone tuning in. And I would like you guys to just come back tomorrow as we feature a new block of films with a theme titled Periscope Vision, Exploring Family Roots. Go to happyfest.com for the full schedule. And before we end, I'd like to bring attention to the current racial injustice that our Black communities are facing. We as AAPI are standing in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. So please visit the tiny URL link down below to learn concrete Houston-specific ways to be involved. And we will also be conducting a special panel next week to discuss the current climate and ways we can engage and best implement our calls to action. So stay tuned for more details. And that completes our 5th day of films. On behalf of OCA Greater Houston, thank you for joining us at Happy Fest and have a good evening.
We would like to acknowledge the grief and outrage right now, especially within our Black communities. Our city, Houston, continues to hurt. George Floyd was a native Houstonian, and according to the Houston Chronicle, we have had 6 police killings this past month alone.
As Asian Americans, we have to acknowledge and interrogate our own anti-Blackness and relative privilege within American society. We have to actively unlearn our own biases. It was Black activists who pushed against racist naturalization laws and supported Asian Americans after the racist murder of Vincent Chen.
Black activists stepping into action have benefited our community in profound ways. We must move beyond being a bystander and join the larger movement of Black Lives Matter. Join us in donating, protesting, petitioning, educating ourselves, and supporting our Black brothers and sisters in whatever way we can. Visit tinyurl.com/BLMAAPI, all caps, for more detailed ways to help, including Houston-specific bail funds, scripts to call local representatives, and translated letters to our family members, all of which you can join us in doing in between screenings. On behalf of OCA Greater Houston and the Happy Fest Committee, thank you for joining us on this broadcast.